Hi, everyone. This is Evan Langert with the Langert Commercial Group. And today I would like to talk to you about the value of having a good, experienced commercial real estate broker on your team. And I'd like to do that by way of a case study. This involves a lease that I had the pleasure of working on a few years ago. And the story goes like this. I got a call from a gentleman, and he said, I've heard through some people that I know that you're a good leasing attorney. I have 10,000 square feet of space. I'm 5 years into a 10-year lease. I do audio consulting and the provision of audio for concerts and for churches and for concert venues. And I do some musical instrument repairs. And I also do some used musical instrument sales. Landlord came to me and said that the 10,000 square foot space next to me had gone vacant and wanted to know whether I wanted to expand and lease that space in addition to my own. They gave me a great rate. Again, it's several dollars below market. I've checked that out. And all I want for you as an attorney is to look it over. Just give me the high points. Tell me the few things that might be in there that could really hurt me. And by the way, I don't want to spend more than $1,000. So I said, okay, I can't do a thorough lease evaluation and comments for $1,000, but I'll do the best I can. I'm efficient. I don't charge a high rate per hour compared to other people with my experience. And go ahead and send me the letter of intent, and we'll go from there. So he sent the letter of intent over, and I was reading it. And immediately the attorney hat that I had on changed to a broker hat because I looked through his deal and I said, yeah, he does have a good base rental rate. It's a few dollars per square foot below what they're charging for similar spaces in the area. But if we'll go back to my module that talks about rental rates versus occupancy costs, he did not have any free rent in the economic package that they'd given him. And he didn't have a tenant improvement allowance, and he was going to do a considerable amount of work in the new space. So I called him and I said, look, Bob, I have a proposition for you. I'll do the legal work on your lease for free if you can talk to the landlord and have me act as your broker, because despite the fact that you've got a really good base rental rate, I don't think you have overall, I don't think you have a good economic deal here. So he said, okay, I'm in. I'm game for that. And he called the landlord, and the landlord graciously allowed me to serve as the tenant's broker, despite the fact that he had already been issued a letter of intent. And so I went to negotiate the terms. First, I got him 3 months free rent. And that may not sound like a lot, but it was almost $25,000. Second, I got him a $100,000 tenant improvement allowance. So that's a total of $125,000 for somebody when he just called me to spend $1,000 to have me review the high points of his lease as an attorney. Well, again, in addition to my considerable brokerage experience, I have that legal experience for more than a decade, much more than a decade. And I started looking at the lease. And when I looked at the lease, I noticed that he was responsible for replacing the HVAC unit on the roof, a large unit, a lot of tonnage, when it went bad, and also that he was responsible for replacing the roof above his premises when it needed replacement. And so I asked the landlord, the HVAC unit that's on the roof, what is the brand? What's the tonnage? How old is it? Give me the serial number, etc. Also for the roof, what's the composite and when was it put on? And I got a very short shrift answer initially. I don't know, I think it was all done about 6 years ago. And this was one of the larger, tougher retail landlords in the United States that I was dealing with. I went back to them and they were annoyed that I did this, but I said, look, I actually really need to know exactly with the HVAC unit when it was put on, what the condition is, what the brand, the tonnage, etc. are, and I need to see the paperwork showing it. I also need to see the paperwork for the roof showing what the composite is and when it was put on. Again, they didn't love that I was asking that. They were trying to get done with the lease, but I pushed. And so they came back with the information. They went to their professionals in-house, and guess what? The roof was 15 years old. the HVAC was also 15 years old. So I made a phone call. I happened to have an old friend and a colleague who sells HVAC systems, really large ones for large buildings and large athletic centers in and around the DC area and beyond. And I asked him, I said, look, I've got such and such brand, this tonnage, this serial number. How long do these things typically last? What's the useful life, is the term of art. What's the useful life for a unit like that? And also, this same person had been a very experienced commercial property manager and broker before he went into HVAC sales. And matter of fact, that's how I met him well over 20 years ago. So I said, I've also got this composite roof, and I'd like to know what the useful life is on that. Well, he actually had to make a phone call to a roofer friend for the latter answer. Well, it turned out that the useful lives for both of these things were in the neighborhood of 15 years. So now I knew that we were coming into a new 10-year lease, and we had an HVAC unit that was on its last legs potentially, and that we had a roof that was on its last legs potentially, and we were going to do a new 10-year term, extend his original term by 5 years, so that it was 10 years, and then do that same 10-year term for the new space. So I negotiated that when the roof went bad and needed replacement, and when the HVAC unit went bad and needed replacement, that the landlord was going to do the initial replacement. Now, if my client went on and kept using his options to extend, and he was in there for 20 or 30 years and or more, and then the second replacement was needed, then he was going to have to do that. But I did get the landlord to finally agree that they were going to do the initial roof replacement and the initial HVAC replacement. Well, about a year later or so, I ran into this person again, and he said, I'm so glad and I'm so grateful that you got the landlord to take on the HVAC, because they just had to do major work in here and replace the unit and do some other work in here, and they just spent $85,000. So you just saved me $85,000. So now we're talking about $25,000 in free rent, and we're talking about $100,000 in tenant improvement, and we're talking about an $85,000 savings in HVAC, because he brought a good and experienced commercial real estate broker into the fold. So we're well over $200,000 in value that I provided for a space that I didn't even find, and for a situation where all this guy wanted to do was to pay me $1,000 as an attorney to look over the lease and give him the high points. Now, I haven't talked with him in a few years, but somewhere during the course of his lease term, this roof is going to go bad and it's going to need replacement. I don't know what it's going to cost, maybe another $50,000, just a figure off the top of my head, maybe more, maybe less. But if you add that onto the mix, then I have brought to that particular table over $250,000 in money in his pocket or into his space, and money that he saved by not having it come out of his pocket. So every good broker has some war stories, as we call them. This is one of mine that I think really illustrates the value of a good, experienced broker. I'm, at the risk of not sounding humble, I've been around a long time, and I'm a very good commercial real estate broker, and I'm a very good commercial real estate attorney. I'm not the only person out there that's a very good broker. I'm not the only person out there that's a very good attorney. Of course, I'd prefer that you engage me, but you may have somebody already that you're working with, or you might even be that person. But at any rate, this is my story. I'm going to come to you with a couple of other case studies that show the value of a good commercial real estate broker. Everybody have a great day, and God bless.